In this demo, I'll walk you through migrating public folders, whether it's an Exchange Online or Exchange on premises, to one or more shared mailboxes, step by step. Migrating public folders to shared mailboxes isn't without its hurdles, but knowing them up front means you can tackle them head on. First, you'll need to preserve your entire public folder hierarchy, along with all messages, as they move to their shared mailbox destinations. Then there's size. You'll want to identify your largest public folders, the ones with the thousands of messages or hefty data volumes, and determine whether they need to be reduced or split for a smoother migration. Space is another key factor. Shared mailboxes come with 50 gigabytes free, but you can license them to double that to 100 gigabytes. And if you need even more room, adding an archive mailbox pushes your capacity up to 200 gigabytes. Finally, once the migration is complete, you'll want post-migration data protection in place to keep your newly migrated public folder data safe. Stick around because I'm going to show you exactly how to navigate each one of these challenges. In the first step, I'm going to show you how you can crawl your Exchange Online or Exchange on premises public folders. To kick off the crawl, we'll do this from the Run tab, and we'll click on Start Crawl here and then Full Crawl Public Folders. So this will kick off that process and crawl your entire public folder hierarchy. And once that's done, we'll view the results in the Browser Report tab. So in here, I've already performed the crawl. And if I expand or click on all public folders at the root level, you'll see all the public folders on the right-hand side. You can also expand it down on the left-hand side and see it here as well. One thing to call out is the weight column. So the weight column by default is going to be listed by total items. And this is cumulative. So for the commercial folder that you see here, you'll see a number of 4,055 items. This is the commercial folder and everything beneath it, including subfolders. So if I expand it here, I'll see the subfolders as well. Those item counts there too, which are also cumulative. So there's other subfolders that's cumulative up to, for example, the backup folder here of 22 items. So everything's cumulative that way. Now, you may want to view everything from a size standpoint, not item count. So to do that, we'll click on this option here on the left, change render by to total size, and now we have the size that's cumulative up to this point. This is very nice because when you're migrating the shared mailboxes, you're limited to the first 50 gigabytes. So if you're starting at a higher level root level folder and you don't know how much data that is in the entire hierarchy, the weight column is going to give you that total immediately. So maybe I want to go and migrate this projects folder. So it's under 10 gig. So I know this is going to work. So if you add a few of them here, you know right away without having to run numbers exactly if it's going to fit or not, just based on looking at the weight column in total size. And this is how you're going to approach planning your migration on future steps. In the next step, we are going to see if we have any large public folders, and if so, whether or not we should consider splitting them. To start, we need to see what our limits are going to be for determining whether or not a public folder should be split. So we're going to start with the destination mailbox folder limits. And in here, there's two values, the maximum mailbox folder size and the maximum items per mailbox folder. So for the mailbox size in gigabytes, I have that set to 50 gigabytes right now because that's the max size of an unlicensed shared mailbox. You can set this to whatever you want to. If you want to set it lower or higher, it's really up to you. And then the maximum items per public folder, by default, we have it set to 800,000 because the max number of items is 1 million. So if you have something this high, we're going to want to split it anyways. However, this is a good opportunity to consider trimming down the size of your public folders. So maybe considering it being the split level at maybe 250,000, maybe less. But you're going to get better outlook performance if you click on a folder with less items than more. So this is a good opportunity to have the migrator do some house cleaning for you because, again, the way this split's going to work is either going to split on size, number of items, or both. And then what will happen, too, is that if it's a folder with a large number of items, like over 250,000 in this case, the first or newest 250,000 items in that folder are going to remain in that folder. Once it goes past this, it'll create a subfolder in the folder being split. And the subfolder will have a date range, like, month, day, year to month, day, year on it as the name of the folder, and then the next set of data chronologically. And it'll continue to keep doing this until it's done doing the split. And then everything happens within the migrator database. So we're not splitting the folders on the public folders. We're splitting it in here. So then that way, when it's time to migrate, the tool's got a map for how to migrate and create those separate subfolders from the split in your target shared mailbox. Next, we're going to kick off the process within the migrator to see if we have any public folders that need to be split. So we do this from the Run tab, and we click on Start Crawl. And this time, we're going to click on Split Public Folders. So it's going to prompt us here in a second, confirming it. And then it's going to run through the process. So if it finds any folders it wants to split, it'll display them here. So for the sake of this task, because I didn't have one large enough for 50 gigabytes, I went and lowered it so you can see what it looks like. But if we find a folder that it wants to split, it'll locate it here. And then we can either export the results and determine further whether or not we want to split it, or we can confirm it, and this will go through and split the folder based on the splitting values that we had set previously. So you would see this, I would click on confirm, and it would split it. And then the end result would be in the browser report tab, we would now see the folders there. So when we go to migrate, it's going to migrate the way it looks within the browser report tab. In the next step, I'm going to show you the real power of the migrator and how you can use separate mappings to define which public folders go to which shared mailboxes and how each one can be configured for each specific situation. In the migrator, you'll see that we have some mailbox mappings below. In this case, I have a couple of them pre-configured. So this is where you configure what public folders you're migrating, where you're migrating to in the shared mailbox, and how they should be migrated. So I'm going to open the first one here. And you're presented with some options. So it starts out at the top with all public folders being the source. So you can't change that. This is coming from public folders. The next option is the destination SMTP. So this has to be the primary SMTP address that you're migrating to. So in this case, this is the primary SMTP address of the shared mailbox target. Now, one thing to note about the migrator is that it doesn't have to be a shared mailbox. It can be a regular user mailbox, resource mailbox, even an archive mailbox, but it needs to be the primary SMTP address of that mailbox here. Next is optional, but this is the destination folder path. So if nothing's listed here, whatever you plan on migrating in this mapping is going to end up in the root of the mailbox. So at the same level as inbox and calendar, for example. In this case, though, I have it set to inbox. So everything in this mapping is going to migrate starting in the inbox folder of this shared mailbox. The next option is the destination type. So active mailbox for a shared mailbox is going to be used 9 times out of 10. However, if you're migrating to a different mailbox type, maybe a user mailbox, and it's an archive mailbox, you can come down here and change it, and this will direct this mapping to go to the archive mailbox of that target mailbox or destination SMTP that you have listed here. Then finally is the include folders. So this is where you tell it what public folders you're migrating. So in this case, for this mapping, I have it migrating everything of the marketing root level folder. So all public folders is the very top of the hierarchy, the root level. And then this is the first root level public folder. So I have it doing marketing, but I don't have an asterisk here. So if I had an asterisk like this, that would tell it bring everything in the marketing folder and the subfolders, so everything beneath it. But if I don't do that, it's only going to bring the content of the marketing folder and ignore the subfolders. Now, you do have the option to include multiple mappings here, multiple folders in a single mapping. So I can add all public folders in another folder type. Maybe that one brings subfolders. You can really customize it. So either have one mapping that's got a lot of this if it all applies to the same settings, or create multiple mappings. Then this option below, the suppress the top level public folder. This is nice if you're migrating content and you don't want to create the folder and then migrate the content. You just want to start migrating the content of it. So for example, what if in marketing and I had a sample as a folder and then test, right? Maybe this is what I wanted to migrate over and I wanted to migrate the subfolders. When it migrates to the shared mailbox, it's going to migrate starting at test. We're not going to bring across this part of the hierarchy, right? So this makes it a little more straightforward when you're migrating it. We're not bringing over this and having to expand through all of it just to get to the folder that you migrated. It's going to start here by default and then bring the subfolders. However, if I have this box checked, what's going to happen is that it's not going to create the test folder. It's going to start migrating the contents of the test folder directly to inbox and then create the subfolder structure. So it gives you some flexibility if you don't want to have it create the folder and then do that. And a lot of times this can happen if the destination folder is the same as the folder you're migrating. You don't want to repeat like test and then /test like this. Like maybe it was something like this. Test and then test again, right? This won't create test, and then the folders. So it gives you a little flexibility when you're trying to migrate that content. But if you don't want to do that, you can just uncheck this box. But that's how it'll do it here. So for this test though, we're just going to do the marketing folder. And then I have another mapping here where this one's a little different. So we're going to the same shared mailbox. No setting for the destination folder path. So it's going to end up in the root level along with the inbox folder. And then we're going to migrate the human resources folder and everything beneath it. And it's going to write out the human resources folder here because I don't have this suppress top level public folder option checked. So with all these mappings, you can imagine that you might have a few in your migration. So we have a way for you to use a CSV file and import your configuration directly into the migrator here. So then that way you can configure everything outside of it. And when you're ready, you can load it in here through the import option and then click go to start your migration. You can even export the mappings you have here back into a CSV file for editing as well, if you choose to do so. So once you have these options all configured and the mappings are set, then we can move on to the next step, which is the migration. In the last step, I will kick off the migration so you can see how the data looks after it is migrated based on the previously configured mailbox mappings. So here's a view in Outlook of an empty shared mailbox. This is that PF shared mailbox that I've configured in the migrator. You can see there's nothing in the inbox and there's no other folders here. So it's your standard vanilla shared mailbox that's ready for data. Back in the migrator, we're going to go ahead and click on the Run tab. And I have the thread count at 2, so it's going to process 2 public folders simultaneously. I click on Start Crawl. And I'm going to kick off the migration with the migrate public folders option. And you can see the threads are loading and it's scanning items. And now you can see items that are migrating. So once you see that, you can go to Outlook and view the content in there during a live migration such as this. So I'm going to bounce back over to Outlook. And if I look in here, I can now see all the files that are showing up. So if you remember that one mapping, I had everything in one of the folders showing up directly in inbox. So I see that here. And then I have a human resources folder because this one I decided to migrate the whole folder over and its subfolders. So you can see that this data is migrating as such here. So I can watch it when it's live, but you can see the 2 different ways of doing it. So, the one mapping again, and let me back up over here to go look at it. Yeah, it was the marketing folder. So the marketing folder is the one that's merging directly into the inbox. The other one is telling it, yep, write the human resources folder to the root and then bring over its subfolders. So I'm going to let that run and we'll come right back when this is complete. Okay, the migration is completed. So you can see migrated a total of 489 items. So I'm going to bounce over to Outlook. And you can see that we have all these items listed right now in the inbox folder. So there's 400 of them. And if I go to human resources, now remember this inbox one, we didn't tell subfolders. So it's just the items within the inbox merged into the inbox folder. This one is the human resources folder that we migrated over here. And you can see that we also have other folders, whether it's a calendar, contacts, and the items that are in that folder in the top level folder for human resources. So everything is visible here within the shared mailbox and during the live migration. So the other part I'm going to show you is the view you have from the migrator. So if I click on Browse and Report and refresh, I can browse back in here, click on the folders, and I can see the migrated content, right? Everything's in black text. The state is processing successful, and you can also see that within the subfolders of this folder because we told it to bring everything over. But marketing, on the other hand, we told it to bring all the files over, but none of the subfolders. So the subfolders are not processed, only these files are. And the other thing that the migrator does is that this is a full synchronization solution. So it's asynchronous, right? Synchronizing from source to destination. However, it synchronizes any change when you run it. So the way to think about whenever you run a migration sync is that you're migrating the state of the source to the destination every time you run it. So if anything changes on the source, like, folders are moved, renamed, items are moved, modified, even deleted items or folders, we're going to synchronize those changes over to the destination, in this case, the shared mailbox. So the nice thing about this is that you can stage a migration well in advance. Go to the Run tab, click on the crawl, and run multiple migration syncs. Or you can reprocess folders items with errors if you had any errors. But you can run the migrate public folders option as many times as you want to keep up with any new data until you're ready to do the cutover. So this will be much quicker because the tool knows what's already migrated. So unless anything's changed, it's going to be a pretty quick sync in this case. But you can see all these items here. And the way we track it is through chain of custody. So if you double click on an item, you'll see all the properties here of the item, like the date received, the size, the message class, unique ID hashes, all that fun stuff. But if you click on chain of custody, this is where you're going to see exactly at what date and time that item migrated. So you'll see that item migrated here. Here's the timestamp for it. Here's the source ID. Here's the destination ID in the mailbox. Now, if it was modified at any point in time during multiple migration syncs, you would see multiple entries here. It would track each time something's happened there. So this is a way of utilizing this information to confirm that, yes, the item was migrated successfully over to the target or destination, and you can prove that through the migrator just by viewing the contents of the item. So this is on the item level. You can't see chain of custody on the folder, but it'll do it on all the items that are displayed here for your view. So permission synchronization is another key aspect of this type of migration. So by default, it will attempt to migrate and synchronize all permissions of any public folder being migrated in your mailbox mappings to the destination mailbox folder within the shared mailbox. And if you don't see any errors, you can make the assumption that the permissions have synchronized. So you'll only see errors in cases where it can't, and that's where you know there's an issue to resolve. So what I'm going to do is show you what this looks like in the destination shared mailbox. So if I go into Outlook, if you recall, this is where we migrated contents to the inbox folder as well as this human resources folder. So I'm going to show you the permissions for the human resources folder. So if I go here, go to properties and then permissions, you can see the permissions that are here. So these are representative of what's in the public folder. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and go over to the public folder and show you the human resources folder from here so you can see. And go to permissions, and you'll see them all here. The only difference between the two is that this one's got the account I'm using for this migration, this O365 account, but this one doesn't have a permission assigned to it on the mailbox because it already owns that mailbox, so it's not there. But every other permission here has been added to it. So that's one part of where you can basically use a shared mailbox as an offshoot of a public folder by having the permissions over there as well. So that's one part of the permissions. The other part is assigning access to see the shared mailbox at the root level. Who should have access to the mailbox to see that? And so while we don't set those permissions directly on the shared mailbox, as you see, we only set it on the folder level, we provide a really easy way for you to determine which users need to have permissions to this particular shared mailbox. And you can do this from our reporting functionality. So if I go into the browser report, I can go here, I can right click on all public folders, and I can click on report. So from here is where we can configure this, such as detail level. I want permissions. And we have a few options. So full permissions is just going to dump out every user or group that has permissions and what the permission type is across everything. Permission owner is only going to show you owners, nothing else. So you have to be at an owner level to have it. But the one we're going to use is permission rollup. So permission rollup, what this does is that if a user or group has at least one permission, maybe it's like across 5,000 folders we migrated, but they only have permission on one folder, they're going to show up once. If they have permission on 1,000 folders out of 5,000, they're still going to show up once, but they have permission. So this is helpful when you're trying to figure out, okay, I migrated this whole branch of the public folder hierarchy. Who needs to have some sort of access to see this shared mailbox? This report's going to do it. So I'm also going to check this ignore excluded locations option, because as you can see here, I have a bunch of red folders. I excluded them because I only want to get permissions from the folders I migrated. Then you can choose the output format. So in this case, I'm going to choose CSV. Since I'm going after Exchange Online, I'm going to deselect the view entire forest. And then down here, I can change the folder path for where I want this to show up. So for example, maybe I want it to be C:\temp. Right, and then I'm going to save the CSV file here. So I can go ahead and click on OK. And what it'll do is it'll begin the process of clearing the permissions. And it does this through PowerShell, and it is a multi-threaded process. So as you'll see here, it's going to start doing them in groups here shortly. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to click on close. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the output. Okay, here we go. So here's the output for it. So it's just a user column, and then these are all the users that have some sort of access across the entire public folders that I migrated. So there's a bunch of these migration accounts that have it, and then some of these users that do, including the user mailbox I'm logged into in Outlook. So if I had this information to it for migration, I can assign rights to have access to that shared mailbox and have it show up in these users' Outlook profiles, and they would be able to view the content straight from here. So this is the other way that we're handling the public folder permissions that are coming across to your shared mailbox for your migration. What you've seen today should make this migration feel a lot less daunting. No need to lock or freeze your public folders. Our solution syncs any changes between migration syncs, whether that's new content, folder renames, moves, or even deletions. You've seen how to take control of large public folders by splitting them with the migrator, making them easier to manage both during migration and for end users afterwards. We walked through creating mailbox mappings to customize your migration, and how public folder permissions carry over automatically to the destination shared mailbox folders. And to wrap it all up, you saw just how easy it is to pull a roll-up summary of users and their permissions, making shared mailbox access assignment a breeze. With all of this working together, migrating from public folders to shared mailboxes doesn't have to be the headache you thought it would be. Your public folders are now safely migrated to shared mailboxes, but the journey doesn't stop there. In our next video, we're taking data protection to the next level, showing you how to back up your migrated data to immutable storage, complete with storage tiering, deduplication, and compression. Trust me, you will not want to miss this one.